Okay, going live, inviting people. Hopefully that will work a little faster. I'm inviting Deniz. And I'm inviting Roger. And we are gonna deep dive into stuff. Okay? Yes. Yes. Success.
Technology.
Hello. We meet again.
Hello.
How's it going?
Round and round.
Round and round.
Yeah.
Look at my new friend.
Oh.
So I might have to get up at some point if he decides to relieve himself in my flat, like he does all day long. It's so fun, I'm covered. So just in case, I've got massive puppy brain. I can't focus on anything else, but let's do it.
That's a good start.
It's vegan to care about puppies. Should I just ask you guys a question, ask you folks a question, and we start from here?
That sounds good.
It didn't come up last time. I really wanted to ask, what do you think of the fact that the word vegan is everywhere? Is this good? Because Roger, I remember when I was in Ireland about 2 years ago, you'd mentioned that finally the normalization of the word vegan was a good thing and that we should reclaim the word, right? And now that, in Switzerland, it's only really in the last 12 months or so that the word vegan is absolutely everywhere. And surely we should be happy about that. Yes or no?
Do I go first? I think it's a complicated question because obviously it's good to get that word out, and it's good that people are finally getting some kind of understanding of what it means. At the same time, there is a big push to regard it as a diet, so that's a problem. So I'm kind of in two minds, but I do think that well, one thing, a movement question, which is very important, is the fact that the grassroots worked for a decade or so to prove to the national groups, and I'm talking about some prominent British ones like Viva, Animal Aid, that kind of group, that veganism is not a scare word. Because they all used to edge their bets quite a lot. They would put things out and they would say, go veg. Viva would have a vegetarian starter kit, for example. And, Viva's name is Vegetarian International Voice for Animals. Most people don't know that, right? And so, no, but they have come on board now with the vegan thing. They were being told by the vegan strategist that veganism was a scare word and we should avoid it. And we should also avoid words like animal rights, and we should especially avoid words like speciesism because they were too academic. Now, I think that people like that are being proven completely wrong by the grassroots. And so people don't seem to be frightened anymore of the word. And so, I mean, in Ireland, obviously, in places like Britain, you had the Greggs sausage roll and all that kind of stuff, which was heavily advertised. In Ireland, there was something called Apple Green, which is like a chain of filling stations. And they had a vegan sausage roll. I'm not quite sure if it's still there, but they had a vegan sausage roll. And they had these big banners, huge banners, which said, it's here, the vegan sausage roll, And so it was kind of like, felt as though veganism in that sense has kind of arrived. And it's for something for us to build on in terms of culturally. And I think then that what we got on the street was a recognition, oh, I know what that means. And, I used to always say that people were vegan curious. And I think that the more visibility of the word vegan has made them more vegan curious. The problem from the kind of downside of it, I think, is the fact that the focus from the ethical core of veganism can get lost a little bit. And so that's the bit that the activists have still got to do. We've proven that veganism is not a scare word. Now we've got to show that veganism is a grand philosophy about justice and non-violence and peace and everything. And it's not a diet, and it's also not just about other animals. So if the activists could do that, then I think that we're onto a fairly good thing.
Tear it down, Deniz.
I guess, I mean, regarding the question, it's the good thing that the word vegan is now everywhere on every package, etc. I guess maybe the question is like, good for what? I'm assuming you mean like that it's good for the animals or the cause, like if it's good for that. And I'm not sure, and I don't want to go too much into detail because this is something I haven't yet researched enough. But I feel like if there was a separation, like I actually think it used to be, between vegan advocacy and vegan movements and vegan outreach and animal rights and animal liberation, I think it would be better. I mean, the word vegan, from what I read in its origin, it is very much about the abstinence from animal products, and so that the package without animal products has vegan on it, that a menu, food, a product is vegan, etc. I think it's sort of inevitable that it's always going to come back to food and consumption and to diet and lifestyle. I feel like that's inevitable, and I think inevitably also it's always this idea that if I buy this one that says vegan on it, it's going to be good for the animals. And I think that's a misconception of how the political economy actually works. And in that sense, I feel like maybe to make veganism and the fact that we can live without using animals, the fact that that's less scary not today, I think is great. But I think in terms of like animal rights, I don't think we should consider that much of an animal rights, I don't know, development.
Well, I tend to agree with Ronnie Lee. He says that veganism is an articulation of animal liberation. I agree with that. And I think if veganism is just thought of in terms of food and in terms of an absence, and I know a lot of activists say veganism is an inaction. Well, if people have that misconception, as I would see it, I think that's our fault, that we haven't managed to get the full meaning of veganism over to people. And I think that there is a real problem there, because from the kind of vegan society down, the meaning of veganism does kind of get moderated and a little bit blanded out and a little bit washed out. And the vegan society are kind of leading the way. And certainly if you look at the difference between the people who started the vegan society and the people running it now, it's kind of chalk and cheese, really. Chalk and vegan cheese, should I say. And, and so, the thing is, though, animal advocates, whether you're talking about animal rights or animal liberation or vegans, modern day activists are not very radical compared with what it used to be like. So there is a little bit of blanding out. I think I might have mentioned last time, you do get this feeling now that you're militant and extreme if you hold a laptop in the street. And so there's a kind of reimagining of what it means to be an animal rights militant, I think, now. And I think that can be applied to the terms animal rights, animal liberation, and veganism. But it's up to us to reassert the more radical values of the philosophy, and also keep pressing the fact that it is a philosophy and it's not a diet. But of course, it does have a large dietary aspect to it, and that's what causes the confusion, I suppose.
I guess, like, I don't know, for example, when I look into the times when veganism was not such an essential part of animal liberation, like, I don't know, the times of the ALF or Ross Coronado, etc., I find that very powerful. And I think it's not a coincidence that while veganism became a more dominant part of animal liberation, that it also became a little bit more upper class. I think in some way, for example, I personally, there is no radical movement without the working class. And I think to tell the working class that one of the things they should be doing is to, in some way, if they want to be called vegan, instead they can animal products, right? So to tell the working class that they have to change their consumer habits, animals, etc., I think we lose the working class immediately. And so this, I think, a very large part why we are no longer that much of a radical movement like we could have been. And I think it comes honestly back to veganism and how it's understood, how it was actually formulated from the very start, you know?
Well, I certainly think there's something in that. And every survey that's ever been done about the movement, but again, whether we talk about the vegan movement, the animal rights movement, or the animal liberation movement, every survey has suggested that it's rather white, it's rather middle class, and so, I suppose that the time when I was most active, it was the kind of most kind of working class, and certainly a lot of working class people got involved with sabotaging hunts, for example. But even so, the core of the organizers were still kind of middle class, really, and so there is that kind of a lack of class analysis within the movement, perhaps. And Steve Best, of course, would point that out. What you can do about it, but you see, the point is the working class are fairly passive now as well, aren't they? I mean, it's not as though we're in a pre-revolutionary state anywhere in any kind of place that you can think of, and so this is why we've got a problem. We're trying to operate within a fairly kind of hegemonic capitalist system, which seems to have got its grip on everybody's balls. I mean, like, it's everywhere and it's kind of all powerful. And also, of course, the one thing that Marx got wrong about capitalism is that capitalism is very flexible, and so it's been able to ride the waves. It's not as contradictory as the traditional Marxist view would suggest, and everybody kind of hoped for. Because every time we get a new financial crisis or COVID or whatever you want, they go, right, this is the end of capitalism, and of course it never is.
Exactly.
Go
ahead.
Yeah. Or do you want to?
I was just going to say shortly, like, I'm changing my mind more towards the fact that there cannot be animal liberation without, like, the understanding of a horizontal symbiosis of life. It's going to be possible as long as there's master and slave, as long as there's, like, boss and employee, whatever, that kind of relationship in society of dominance, etc. Animal liberation can be best. Like, we have to coexist for real. And so this is why I sort of, like, skeptical of even the mention of what it is that we consume under a system where all the choices are given to us by force, and so I would like to see animal liberation much more of an understanding that we, along everybody else, the 99%, are fighting against the same, and are technically fighting for the same, like horizontal co-living and symbiosis of life. And so this is why, for me, the mention of, like, who ate what under this current system, considering that 99% of us are already struggling with being alive. Anyways, yeah, I think I've said it last time anyway, but sorry.
Yeah, well, I can see the point, and I get what you mean, and that's one of the stronger of Jake's points, I think. That kind of position. But I just think that whether we're talking about animal rights, animal liberation, or veganism, we're in the same boat, in the sense that the working class are not really that involved. And, it used to be not controversial to suggest that we are a left-leaning movement, or even a left-wing movement. Now that's been controversialized in recent years. So you got the more right-wing kind of people, Paul Bashir and all those kind of people, who don't like that. They talk about being apolitical, which obviously is a political position anyway. But the idea that we can, that old thing about, we need men's rights activists walking alongside feminists for the animals type thing. I mean, that's just political naivety writ large. And basically it means the feminists don't turn up. And so the ones that logically are more progressive and already on our side, if we see ourselves as progressive, are the ones who now get alienated. I know several people now around Dublin who are very alienated from the vegan and animal rights community because of all the new people and the new values that have come into it in recent years. And they almost like not feel embarrassed particularly, but they feel it difficult that they have to defend things. I mean, it was always the case with Peter. Peter was always the problem, especially for people in North America. Antonina Celli II talks about this all the time. That you'd have to spend the first 10 minutes explaining that you weren't Peter, because everybody would say, "Oh, you must be Peter, right?" And they go, "No, nothing to do with us," and all this kind of stuff. And we've now got a situation where there's a big push to say, well, we're apolitical. Everybody is welcome, but that is just naivety in terms of politics. It doesn't work like that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think there's. No, sorry. No.
Sorry, I want to jump in with a question because I want to also be mindful of not kind of like rehashing what we talked about last time either. You know, when you say that people feel like they're super radical holding a laptop, fair enough. And, you know, people they don't really feel very political. How can we, you know, what's the suggestion to radicalize people? What is it that people do? Because from where I stand, and, you know, like I'm still new, blah, 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 sure, we said all that. But having to have a job, you know, being caught in that, with the scrutiny of social media, the kind of security systems, the kind of penalties, people are scared shitless to do anything. At one point here, there was a talk of organizing a slaughterhouse blockade, but, you know, in Switzerland, for example, they put a guy in jail for 1 year without a case, without any legal anything, because they suspected him of something, and it's a legal thing to do here. You know, they suspected him of having been involved in something. They were able to keep him in prison for 1 freaking year. You know, so I think it's easy to go like, well, you know, I think, at least from, you know, where I am, people don't want to get too political because they're afraid of the ramifications, and they're like, you know, they can't be radicalized because they associate being radicalized with getting out of the system. And then what? And then what? Like, what about my job? What about my bills? What do I do? What's going to happen to me? So where can people go from where, you know, holding a laptop to?
Well, what I would do in terms of that would be to clarify what I mean, because I tend to think that there's probably a whole bunch of things that the grassroots can do, which is not going to get you into jail. It's just that at the moment, we seem to have this kind of scripted activism where people are directed to go to a place and then get told what to do. That's kind of counter-revolutionary. What you need is to encourage people to do what they want to do and say, okay, so what's the score? What's your interest? You know, let's kind of try and develop that and facilitate that, rather than kind of slot them into a system, which is a bad thing, whether we're talking about capitalism or AV. It's a system, right? And so you've got to break out of that in your head, really.
Yeah, you know, the problem with that, like I get that, and, you know, like, the thing is, when people broke out, and AV always seems to come back to AV, you know, but when people broke out of AV to go do their own things, you've now got the circle of compassion, you've got diamonds, you've got, I don't know, squares, you've got make up your own shape, and everyone keeps doing the same thing under different branding, thinking they're created their own thing. What do you do about that? What can you do?
Well,
you know what? Sorry,
yeah.
I'm thinking, just wanted to add, like, I think I'm going to be reducing everything I say to my newfound problem with, like, the consumption part of veganism. But I think one of the problems is, and I want to give you an example. Today, a friend of mine messaged me saying that she watched this, like, horrible footage from a lab that's testing on animals, and she will never, ever buy something that was tested on animals ever again. You know, and the thing is, like, I think with the understanding that if I don't buy this product, it's gonna help, and then I'm thinking I have to tell others that they shouldn't buy it and it's gonna help. I think that's the first trap that we fall into, and we end up doing actually not much, you know. So what I actually want to tell her is like, in some way, I think I prefer people to be more active, and that can translate into their daily life in a million ways. You know, I just don't want people to fall into the trap like, oh, I watched something about eggs and I'm never buying eggs again because I want that to end. You know, so I just wanted to add that how it translates into action for everyone, I can't tell, but I do want to tell people that not buying something is not going to be the solution. I wish you would send an email instead, and I think that would be more effective, you know?
I'm going for both, though. Sorry, Roger. Don't buy the eggs and send the email, but just also, I don't know.
It's a tricky one. I mean, like, obviously, there's a major problem if people fighting for animal rights are consuming other animals. There's a problem there, and it was always a contradiction within the ALF that there was a kind of suggestion that, you know, ALF activists shouldn't eat flesh, but there was no prohibition about animal secretions, for example, and so you would get a lot of vegetarians maybe, and you'd probably get, you know, a few flesh consumers as well because they like the image and all that kind of stuff. You certainly would in the hunt saboteurs. You know, now whether that's a good thing or whether that means that we can grow. What it does mean, of course, is that you're then rubbing shoulders with a lot of different people, and you then share information, and they tend to go vegan. Let's just use that phrase. They tend to go vegan as part of their growth, if you like. And what the thing is about social movements, from a sociological point of view, is they're supposed to be things that transform an individual and encourage things like critical thinking, and encourage things like self-activation, encourage things like self-motivation and being autonomous, self-organization, DIY politics, right? Now, none of those phrases seem to fit our movement anymore because it's all, we're in these little kind of boxes. Oh, we do this and we do that. Well, part of what we need to do is tell people, I suppose, or to suggest to people that we don't have to get into any box. You know, and getting into boxes might be the problem. And that's what I perceive to be an issue in the movement. So going back to what you said before, Sophie, I'm not quite sure whether the alternative is we're going to have to do stuff that will get us put away, but it's more to do with just be much freer to do what we want in terms of around the people that we want. So people who are employed can do all kinds of what would Francione call creative vegan education and all that kind of stuff, right? But there's loads of that. But I mean, we certainly don't have to kind of join a group in order to do it, and we certainly don't have to ask permission for anybody to wear a certain thing, and we certainly don't have to be told what to say and to be given a script. That's the kind of thing that you learn on the job. You know, you kind of watch what people say, and you try it out. You might do a bit of role play, and then you learn. It's trial and error, but that's the way it works. That's how we learn. But once you do that, then you're an organizer. There's a world away from being, let's say, somebody who stands in a cube and being an organizer of a social movement. That's a world of difference, you know. And so it's like, you know, there's a world of difference in Dublin where you've got, you know, several groups who are organizing stuff on all kinds of levels, different levels, doing different things. And then every 6 weeks, you know, the AV turn up. But, you know, it's a different thing, you know. Did that make sense?
It makes sense. I think most people don't have most people don't have the knowledge, I know that, the information and the creativity. And, you know, I've seen people feel like empowered. Hold on, Jake just posted a question which says, how do we re-radicalize the movement while focusing primarily on educational outreach?
Well, all outreach has got to be educational. Yeah. Hi, Jake. Everything has got to be educational at some point. And so even a pressure campaign has got an educational element to it. That's the reason why the ALF had a press office, is because it wasn't just a question. You see, I mean, the safest thing for the activists to do would be just go and do it and don't tell anybody. But the idea was to try and use that action in order to explain why it was done, to kind of elucidate the kind of philosophy of animal rights. And people then go, oh yeah, that's a good idea, right? I mean, you can do it all in secret. You know, you could do a pressure campaign and never release a press release. And, you know, I mean, the target is going to know that they're being pressured, but you don't have to tell the public. Yeah, but in terms of if you want the public to understand what's going on, then you would have to, and that's where you'd need an educational component of it. And what you could get there is a group like my group, VIP, could work with a group doing a pressure campaign, and you get information both ways, which could be shared. And so any new pictures or any new whatever coming out of the pressure campaign could be given to the street educators to be used. You know, I mean, have a look at this. This happened last week. You know, that's a very powerful thing to do on the street, saying, you know, this is a picture from a laboratory in Ireland taken last week. That's a very powerful thing.
You know, I'm thinking. Oh, sorry.
No, it's educational. That's all. That's the educational element to it.
I feel like the only way that educational outreach then can also lead to a radicalization is, and this might sound strange, but I think if we talk to people about the fact that, and spread an awareness that basically what we experience as racism, sexism, classism, ableism, what animals, non-human animals experience as speciesism, etc., is technically, these are all pillars of like the dark side of the force, you know. And this is what I mean in terms of it almost doesn't matter how that understanding translates into action, because technically I think if I fight against racism, that is part of animal liberation, you know, because of this horizontal symbiosis of life. And so I feel like there's also this fact that, like, I mean, are we really expecting that thousands of people are going to be super radical for new non-human animals? I think that's very unlikely, to be honest. Like, these are not, I mean, they have to be people who have nothing to lose, and usually that's when you're affected yourself. But that doesn't technically matter. Like, if I fight against the oppression that I experience directly, and the other ones as well, technically that sets the stage for animal liberation. And so I think if there's educational outreach, I think it should not be just focused on one type of domination, but the understanding that there is total oppression, you know, and it can translate into action however one prefers.
Well, I guess one aspect to that, one response to that would be that there's a name for it, which is pro-intersectional. But I mean, that's become a dirty word in the movement. I mean, like,
it's become an insult by now.
Yeah, well, I mean, but the point is, you've got a lot of people in the last, I don't know, 8-10 years coming into the movement, and they're coming into what essentially is a pro-intersectional movement and slagging off pro-intersectionality as though it's a bad thing, because they don't understand the movements that they've joined. And one thing they certainly don't know is the history. And also, it's a willful ignorance. It's not just that they just don't happen to know it. It's that they go out of their way not to know it. You know, and so, you know, there are certain individuals in high places in certain groups that deliberately don't tell the truth about the history of our movement, because they're trying to change it. It's almost like a coup d'etat going on, because there's a lot of people who don't quite fit politically coming into the movement, which is exactly what social movement theory says happens to movements. So one of the classic problems for social movements is happening to our movement right now. So we're seeing a lot of people who are coming in with moderate views, with right-wing views, with business views, entrepreneurs, all these kind of ideas that didn't quite fit with the progressive politics of the movement, and now they're kind of trying to redefine it. And so you've got a lot of people actually trying to redefine what these terms mean, because just that because then it fits their politics instead of the politics that already existed. They don't like what existed before.
I want to pick up exactly on a comment by Yattering saying that they don't want to give up their privileges, eating meat or dairy, the patriarchy, etc. They're all basically holding those privileges. And before I read that, I was thinking about a leaked email I saw recently by one horrible guy in the animal rights movement accused of being an abuser. Again, third continent, third time lucky. And he, in an email to his people, he's calling intersectionals and social justice warriors extremists. Like how to deal with the extremists who will have opposing views to him and attack him of all of these things. And it's quite laughable. Zuckerbroten Paicha just wrote, "It's the toxic man's rights activist in the vegan movement."
There's a rewriting going on. I mean, one of the most common claims from the anti-intersectionals is that if you're an intersectional or a pro-intersectional, it means that you put human rights above animal rights. Nothing could be further from the truth. But that's what they say over and over and over again. I get accused of it. I mean, I was accused of it about 10 days ago on TikTok. Oh, you have consistently put human rights over animal rights. Like, where and when? Because it's not true. But the point is, truth doesn't matter in this argument. It's an ideological argument that's going on.
But I think we also made a mistake, like as the intersectionals or whatever we may want to call it. And I think we do the exact same mistakes that vegans do about like policing each other. Did you eat this? Did you check the ingredient of that? What is this? What is that in your hand? What are you wearing? And I feel like as intersectionals, we did the same instead of like a much more systemic understanding and systemic strategy around how to approach the problem. We did a lot of policing each other. You said this, you wrote that in this comment, and so on. And I think that turns a lot of people off, to be honest. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the main problem. Obviously, there are other reasons as well. But I think one of the strategic problems was that we also, I think, approached the intersectionalization of the movement in not the necessarily best way.
Well, I don't know if I'd say we do that. I think there's like, two handfuls of people on social media speaking in terrible ways, policing each other, using using a language that is just not okay. And then people think that that's what intersectionality is. Kind of like when vegans are being like horribly holier than thou, judgy vegans, the way I'm sure we all have been at some point. Then people think that's what veganism is.
Yeah, I'm very disconcerted by these things about you're not vegan, I'm vegan, I'm more vegan, and all that kind of stuff. At the same time, phrases like veganism, animal rights have to mean something as well. But also going back to what Deniz said, and you'll know this from your own work, that these problems are not just confined to our movement. I mean, the feminist movement is riven with divisions, especially now because of the issues of the trans issues that have arisen in the last, say, 2.5 years. But other movements, you'll probably find that if you were deeply involved with the environmental movement, there's probably all kinds of fissures and divisions in there too. And it's the same as in a political party. Unfortunately, one of the problems about social movements is they're full of human beings, and we can be very difficult. Going back to Steve Best, he says that people on the left make a lot of allegations about people in the animal movement, let's call it the animal movement, and people in the animal movement make a lot of allegations against people in the left, like, for example, they're deeply speciesist. And he says, and this is a quote, he says, guess what? Both critiques are right. But we have to find a way of joining together. So to answer your question from a while ago, Sophie, about how, Steve Best would say the only way would be to do alliance politics. We have to figure out a way of doing alliance politics, which means working with people who don't quite fit our thing, but without slagging them off, and hope that they won't slag us off as well. And then the people who ever go intersectionals will always suggest that we're the ones giving ground all the time. Well, I don't believe that's true either, because the idea is that if you see speciesism, you call it out. Oh, I just dropped my phone almost.
I thought you were doing a call out.
Yeah.
Call out. We gotta do a call out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think I'm back on there. It was because I keep getting confused between 6 o'clock and 5 o'clock for these gigs, because you always put 6 o'clock, but it means you're 6 o'clock, right? And so, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So, changing tack a little bit, I wanted to, especially with Jake on board, I wanted to talk about pressure campaigns in the light of this rather terrible book. I don't know if you know this book. It's called Capers in the Churchyard, and it's by Lee Hall, who's a lawyer, right? And it's analysing the Hillgrove. I've forgotten it already. It's the guinea pig farm, which was closed down, right, with a pressure campaign. But the pressure campaign involved things like they dug up somebody's grandmother and hid the body. They had a lot of New Church guinea pig farm it is. They had dug
up the body from a grave and hid it.
Yeah. So a woman called Gladys Hammond. Yeah. There's well, I mean, one of the first militant acts in the movement was that the hunter John Peel was dug up. His grave was dug up. Yeah. And so so that's one thing that happened. There was a lot of kind of paedophile posters put up all over saying that the people who owned the guinea pig farm were paedophiles, this kind of stuff. And what Lee Hall is claiming is that the guinea pig farm was closed down through a successful pressure campaign. But the real problem was what did it mean? And I think I alluded to this last time, because, for example, so these people used to own a dairy farm, and then they sectioned off some of their farm to start this guinea pig farm, which was then closed down by the pressure campaign. So what they did was they expanded their dairy business again to fill the gap again. In the meantime, the laboratory got the guinea pigs from somewhere else, because pressure campaigns take quite a lot of time. It gives the opposition, the target, time to go elsewhere and stuff. So I think that, as I said before, I'm actually quite a supporter of pressure campaigns, but I think that their effectiveness can be exaggerated. And I think we just ought to be honest about the fact that we're going to spend quite a lot of time, and in an arena that's liable to get you arrested compared with other things, for an outcome which is not certain at all. And so maybe a pressure campaign can be thought about as a tactic in the toolbox, but it's certainly not. They're not brilliant in other words, in terms of what they do. And I think that because I know that you're kind of thinking, well, maybe that's the way to go. Mm-hmm. I would say that's fine, so long as you don't expect the world from them. They take a long time. They can be kind of dangerous in terms of the law. And secondly, when we've won, we haven't won much. That's what I wanted to say about that, because it's kind of, we just have to be realistic. There's no magic bullet in our movement. We say, oh, we don't have time to do vegan education, one plate at a time. Steve Best used to slag off Francione all the time, saying we don't have time for one plate at a time thing, convert people, yeah, and all that kind of stuff, which may be true, But what do we have time for? You know, I mean, what do we have time for? Because everything takes time.
Jake just wrote, "Are you describing pressure campaigns or vegan outreach?"
Well, in terms of time, I'm describing both, Jake, because both of them will take a lot of time. And again, speaking as a sociologist, if we think of culture as a juggernaut, it takes a heck of a long time to turn them around. Social change in the absence of revolution is slow. It speeds up when we've got a more radical thing going on in society, what I tend to call social turbulence, right? The more social turbulence we've got, that tends to be a good thing, because new ideas come around and ideas get bounced around. But we're not in that situation. We're in a very, society has been very pacified lately, and there's not much happening really, and I suppose even XR and that kind of street theatre type stuff, it's very, it's very kind of visual. But in terms of its radicalism, is it? But what else can they do? I mean, we're dealing with a huge problem called capitalism, and the fact that we're dealing with some of the richest enemies that we could even think of going up against, backed by some of the richest individuals in the entire world. I mean, talk about stacking the odds against you. But that's just the reality of the situation. Most people fit into a speciesist, racist, capitalist society, and they're quite happy. I mean, they won't be tuning into us. They'll be watching the football. That's the difference.
Yeah, I guess in terms of pressure campaigns, do they scratch just the surface? I mean, it's not dismantling capitalism necessarily, right? But actually no strategy is. So I do believe that pressure campaigns, although it's not necessarily my niche, I think they do hold an important place. And I guess that's also partly because I saw one very successful example happen in Germany. It was a testing lab called LPT. And it was perfection. There was social media, there were vigils in front of it, there was a march, there was street outreach, there was everything you can imagine done just around that, an investigation, obviously, just around that one testing lab. And they successfully did close it down. And then actually what you said happened as well. Of course, what did they do? 2 years later, they rebrand and they open under, actually, wait, what was the name?
Was it
the Power of Now or some fucked up name like that. Anyways, it's true, that's not the entire solution, right? But I mean, since no tactic is the solution, we need a lot of tactics that kind of do something, and I think the pressure campaign tactic is one of them. And I feel like, honestly, for instance, I feel like going for 10 years to a vigil in front of the same slaughterhouse again and again and again, I feel like there's so many useless tactics that at least if these people were given a direction to do something that can do something, I would prefer very much that rather than a lot of people wasting their time, like myself, for a very long time.
Yeah, well, I'd like to empower people to do what they want to do, but I also encourage them to think very deeply about what they want to do. And I think the answer, whether we're talking about pressure campaigns or street outreach or vegan education, whatever you want to call it, the answer is that we don't have enough of both, because the most successful pressure campaigns would be for it to be going on all the time and everywhere. And the most successful vegan education strategies would require us to be doing it, whatever that is, but all the time and everywhere. So this is why I think that Ronnie Lee's onto something when he says that what we need to do is facilitate the grassroots, so the grassroots can expand and be everywhere, doing things like vegan fairs and whatever they want to do. Maybe they want to do pressure campaigns. That's fine. Now that leads to the question of what's stopping them. Well, obviously we can talk about are we in a passive situation politically, or is it something to do with money? Now, I think it's something to do with money, but it's not all to do with money. But if we look at where the money of our movement is, It's not with the grassroots. It's with some transnational corporations, or it's with some national corporations, and now increasingly it's with certain individuals. And so we've got a big concentration of money. So I've called it the funding structure. The funding structure of our movement is fucked up, right? And it would help if we could help free that in order to allow it to move into the grassroots and facilitate that in some way. Exactly how that will be done, I'm not quite sure. You'd have to have some kind of central kind of mechanism by which you can assess kind of, I mean, a little like Veg Fund and those kind of things, right?
We've lost Deniz. Well, Veg Fund, yeah. Hold on, we lost Deniz. Let me try to see if I can get her back in.
I just got a swirly gig on my screen for a little while.
Oh, really? Oh, her battery died.
Ah.
That's really bad timing.
I know. After you sending us emails going, don't forget to have a fully charged battery and put your phone on do not disturb and all that.
I didn't remind the full battery today.
That's typical of somebody who just cannot follow a script. You see, that's the problem.
I mean? Yeah, People need to follow.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
But I was kind of hoping you'd lead on to saying how we would reclaim these fundings, because I think it's mostly one person who funds a lot of organizations, a lot of influencers, a lot of even other types of organizations, either grassroots for the purpose of this conversation, either actual companies and things like that can be sourced back to a very few people. How can people find funding for whatever project they have? That's also a big question that comes up all the time. And I mean, nowadays it shouldn't be too hard. You've got all those crowdfunding platforms. And when you were talking as well, just a different topic real quick, but when you were talking about an ongoing global pressure campaigns, I'm thinking it's never been easier to have something like that because of we're in 2021, because right now we're live on Instagram having this conversation. Everyone's connected with a lot more means. Why isn't that happening?
Well, I think, I mean, obviously the answer is bound to be complicated, and we're probably not going to be able to kind of, mediate every kind of variable of that. But there has obviously got to be some issues in the sense that part of the passivism of the grassroots and the rank and file of the movement is that for generations we've almost had this kind of issue of you join something and you donate to them, and yet then you've kind of done your bit type thing.
Yeah.
Well, so obviously that kind of mindset needs to be challenged, and groups that challenge it were things like the Hunt Saboteurs. And the reason I got involved with the Hunt Saboteurs, and I tried originally to get involved with them in 1977, it's because I saw them in a music paper, and they weren't asking for money, they were asking for you to do stuff, right? And that kind of appealed to me. But at the same time, you used to get the national groups, and they used to have leaflets, and the headline was help us to help them. In other words, you give me money and I'll do it, which is essentially the same message that you get from Joey Carbstrong. Give me money and I'll do this fabulous film, right? But it's disempowering. It's counter-revolutionary, really. The idea would be that anybody with any skills, we would share them about. We would workshop it. We would try to become a very kind of organic kind of institution where we're all learning from each other. And like you say, we've now got a global instant communication system. We're the first generation to have this system. I mean, and of course, what did the world do? You go on TikTok and you get people swearing and stuff. But I mean, we could, as progressives, let's just use that as a catch-all, we could use this tool to try to radicalize the movement. And part of that radicalization would be to try to get people to think, where am I giving my money? And I'm not talking necessarily about this big donor because I don't know anything about them. But I do know about the rank and file of people who send off their subscription to Peter and Animal Aid and Viva and all of that. They haven't got a clue what happens to that money. And my position has always been, why do you do that? You've got activists down the road from you who are kind of, struggling to get a vehicle through an MOT to go sabbing.
Yeah.
And you're sending money. I mean, from an Irish point of view, I always have this vision of, you see a plane going over. We're on the street, you see a plane going over. You think, there's all the subscriptions from the Irish people going to Animal Aid. And you think, but, why? Why would you send money to Kent when you've got loads of groups in Ireland who are all grassroots? They're not waged. And so that means that all the money is going for the animals and all that kind of rhetoric, which is very popular. If you give money to a corporation, you haven't got a clue what happens to it.
Yeah. Or if you give money to whatever influencer to make more, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Well,
I mean, not because I was about to go give money to influencers to create more YouTube content, but some influencers have good YouTube content versus others. So I didn't want to finish the sentence because I realized I give money to one person for their content. And I was like, how far do I want to go with that? That was just what happened.
Well, I would always go back to DIY politics. And the best thing we can do is empower the people in our area. And like, for example, the group that I work with, as VIP, we work with Vigo, Vegan Education on the Go. And that's run out of the back in the Daylight Animal Sanctuary by Declan Bowens. Now, so he called the group Vegan Education on the Go because he realized that most of the effort that was going on in Ireland was based in Dublin. And he wanted to be able to facilitate people all over the island to do stuff. So it was like a mini version of what we've got in mind, that we need to have a structure where we can encourage people. And he's done things like he's printed leaflets out for people. He's even physically given them tables and stuff for them to do things. So those kind of facilities need to be available. And of course, people say things like, "Oh well, there's going to be waste." Some people are going to waltz off with the tables and all that, which is true. But there's a heck of a lot of waste in the national system. And one of the most wasteful things is the duplication that they do, because they're all the same. I mean, you look at your average leaflet from the big groups. Apart from their logos, they're all the same. They all say the same thing. It's usually an animal welfare message, about cruelty or something. But if that went to the local people, they can do their own leaflets and put their own message and talk about their local situation, which they know the best. The local people know the situation the best. They know how to talk to their local populations. They're part of the community. So it's DIY community activism. That's the way to go. But we need for that to be happening everywhere. And so the challenge is, how do we get to this corporatized system that we've got to the grassroots system, which in theory, in my head anyway, is a lot better. I mean, there's no doubt about it. If we could get what, say, Ronnie Lee wants, it would be marvelous, because there'd be vegan stuff happening everywhere all the time. Now that would be brilliant. You don't have to wait for, your campaigns from this and your campaigns for that, and you don't have to be told what to do. It's kind of like, right.
Or when you're told, wear this, say that, and then go have a vegan burger afterwards and think that you're winning, right?
No, you do what you want, and you'll probably get more pressure campaigns that way, because people will maybe get a bit frustrated by just the kind of passage, and they are, fuck it, let's get something done, And a point I wanted to make about the hunt saboteurs. Isn't it interesting that the influencers in this movement don't talk about the hunt? Do you ever see talk?
Not once.
Yeah, but why is that? Is because they'd be shown up by the hunt saboteurs who don't take a wage, just get out there and save lives. I mean, I've always thought, how come you never see them talk about the hunt sabs?
Yeah, when I first learned about Hunt's House, I've got Deniz. Deniz, I can't reply to you on WhatsApp, but I've tried to invite you. Right now, it's still saying waiting for you. I keep trying to invite you over and over again, and I don't know why it's not working. So, in case you hear this, I'm really sorry. She's just written in capital letters, like, let me in. I keep inviting you, and it's not working. I'm sorry. Something broke when you left.
Well, that,
And I can't go into WhatsApp to reply either.
that's what happened to me, because you were going, why,
Yeah.
yeah, you haven't joined, and there was nothing to join on the screen.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
and so I guess she's not getting it either, and which is a shame. Why don't we do this? Why don't we quit and organize the third one when Deniz is back, if you want?
Yeah, why not? Why not?
I think this is going to become a regular thing if you want to give your time.
I think you should get Jake on as well.
Yeah, I think next time, Jake, we'll just invite him in. Actually, I'm going to add him to the group chat and organize the next one for the four of us.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Oh, it's going to get so fun. I hope you all fight in a good way.
Okay, well, thanks for inviting me once again. And
awesome. Thanks for wanting
yeah.
to come back. I can't wait.
Okay, take care, everyone.
See you, Roger. Bye, everyone. Thanks for your comments and watching.